moving on, talking tennis. And I'm delighted to say Nico Jones joins us. Really, try saying that quickly. Live from London this morning. Nico, you're somebody who's steeped in tennis analytics, and one of the things we wanted to talk to you about in particular was how your analytics suggested that Corey Goff was going to win against Venus Williams. Tell us the story of your magic numbers.
Oh, well, I'm not sure we knew she was going to win, but we definitely thought it was going to be a lot closer than the media seemed to make out in the aftermath. I mean, Venus had been in pretty bad form, hadn't played a lot of tennis in recent months, and Corey Goff has been on the radar for years as a potential number one. From the age of 10, she was brought over to Muratoglu, who's Serena's coach, his academy in France, and then she was like a US Open Juniors finalist when she was 13. So it was no great surprise to see her come in and probably like beat a veteran quite handily in the end. It seemed like, I mean, the story was more the symbolic nature of the match, I think, than the tennis itself in the end. But yeah, it's a great story. I mean, her run has been extraordinary, like for a 15-year-old. But I think when she ran into Halep, who is a proper player, former world number one, obviously, I think her limitations were kind of exposed. Halep never really got out of third gear and beat her fairly handily. So while it's an amazing run, I think it should be put in context. I mean, just 15-year-olds used to be pretty commonplace on the WTA. I think Martina Hingis was number one in the world when she was 16 years of age. So I mean, it's phenomenal. I don't want to take away with it and be all bah humbug at that Corey Goff story, but yeah, it wasn't a massive surprise to us as it seemed to be to everybody else.
Is she a step above the rest of the 15, 16-year-olds that have come through and have played at that level over the last couple of years?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, she is. The girls burst through as teenagers a lot and kind of they fizzle out. When they get to 19, 20, the game gets figured out, or I don't know, they lose the motivation. She seems like she's got the whole package. I mean, she really, she's been touted as a future world number one for a while, and I think she's confirming the faith that people have had in that. She's got an amazing team around her, as has been like kind of said a lot over the last week. She's with a good management company now, and the sky really is the limit for Coco. But there's some other girls like Anna Samova made the semi-final of the French last month, and she's only 17. I mean, there's a lot of talent coming through in the women's game, but yeah, no, Coco seems to be the top of the pile, definitely.
It seems that during Serena's absences over the last couple of years, what we've seen is a game that's fairly turbulent at the top in the women's game. There's something enjoyable about that. There's something enjoyable about the unpredictable nature of it. Or do you feel that perhaps the strength of the game would be better served by the next Serena or by something akin to the men's game where you have two or three powerhouses?
It's hard to tell the balance. I mean, it is far more entertaining, and the unpredictable nature of it means that like you just on any day, pretty much the top 100 women can beat each other on any day. Usually, I mean, okay. The cream of the crop will like the Plišković, Kvitović, Bartys will win one or two tournaments a year, whereas the other players may not. But on a given day, they can all lose to each other, and that makes it exciting, to be honest, more than anything else. In comparison to the men's game, I mean, I wouldn't mind if it was 3 or 4 dominant players on either side, but if they were in their mid-20s and it was kind of new and it was kind of a new brand, a new group of top players, the kind of fact that it's still the same 3 guys in their 30s still doing it in the men's game, every single slam, most of the Masters 1000s, I think that's becoming a little bit repetitive from someone who has to watch it or who watches it every day, week in, week out. It drives your anorak fan towards the women's game, I think, more than but your casual fans. Obviously, the massive games between Djokovic and Nadal and Federer that you see at the slams, they're worth tuning in for. I mean, and we're kind of privileged to get to see them play at the top level for so long. But when it's every tournament comes around and Djokovic is even money to win Wimbledon, it's kind of a bit predictable.
So who is actually that next tier who might be the replacements for the three heavyweights in the men's game that we're talking about, because everybody is trying to make somebody the natural successor to either one of any of these three, and everybody who has come up so far, their game has been flawed, their temperament has been flawed, their character has been flawed. Something is wrong to the point where they can't make a breakthrough.
Yeah, it's really hard to put one's finger on it, to be honest. I mean, there's been generation with like the Dimitrov, Nishikori generation, even like they're in their late 20s now. People are still talking about when Dimitrov's going to break through. I mean, he's won one Masters 1000. He's made a couple of semi-finals and slams, but I mean, he just never ever amounted to his potential. Nishikori, I mean, as he's made a slam final and he's won a Masters or so, but again, when it gets to the kind of crunch end of the slams, generally he seems to just come. Now they're talking about the next gen. This is the kind of buzz term of tennis, and there's a next gen finals every year where the top 10 under 19 players meet up and play a kind of similar thing to the World Tour finals in London that the main tour play. That's populated by guys in their 19, 20, 21. This year was Zverev, Tsitsipas, Rublev, Francis Tiafoe, Deminar, Shapovalov. All these guys, they've all gone out in round 1 or 2 of Wimbledon this year. You know, I mean, they're totally have no consistency. They pop up, they have a really good result at a Masters, and then they just go missing for a few months. It's really hard to see where the next dominance is coming from.
Yeah, really. So in a weird way, you're actually making the case that the dominance of Federer, Nadal and Djokovic is a sign of the weakness of the men's game.
Yeah, well, it seems that way. I mean, I mean, that's not... Federer and Nadal and Djokovic are probably the 3 greatest players to have ever played the game. So to lose to them it doesn't necessarily mean that you're absolutely awful at tennis, but for it to be going on for so long at this stage, and for there not to have been someone to break through and repeatedly beat one or any of them, it seems to be a bit worrying.
So they're the three best players ever to play the game. But would Jim Courier have won a couple of clay court titles during the Nadal era? Would Agassi have won something during it? Would Pete Sampras have been able to put it up to them? Would Stefan Edberg have been able to put it up to them? Would Boris Becker have been able to put it up to them? You know, would Goran Ivanisevic have managed to win? Would Pat Rafter have won? There's been none of those kind of middle tier of players who come and win 1 or 2 in the midst of all this. It's generally been one of those. Andy Murray, I suppose, is the only one there. You would kind of say Andy Murray's at that same level as Ivanisevic or Pat Rafter or whoever, who wasn't quite good enough to be a world number 1 over a whole season, but was good enough to win a couple of majors. Yeah,
well, I mean, Stan Wawrinka as well has popped up with a few. His top level is as good as theirs. I mean, he only shows flashes of brilliance once or twice a season, but when he does, he's unplayable. But yeah, I think Murray, a bit unfair on Murray, because Murray has countless Masters 1000 titles and really did stick it to the guys for years. I think he'd be a tier up from Ivanisevic and stuff. But yeah, but like the likes of just coming and winning it once off from out of nowhere, or a couple of titles, it's just really hard to see. The guys are so good, and then there's just it's just so difficult over 5 sets to break them down. Over 3 sets, people beat them all season. Zverev, Dominic Thiem beats Nadal and Clay all the time over 3 sets. But once you get into 5 sets against these guys, it seems to be pretty much impossible these days. Maybe one of them, but all 3 definitely no.
Give us winners in the men's and women's from this point.
I thought Djokovic would walk the men's from the start, and he seems to be doing it fairly handily. But the one kind of wild card up there is Bautista Agut. He's in the top half of the draw. He'll play Djokovic in the semi-final. He's the only player not to drop a set. He is in scintillating form. I saw him play against Karen Khachanov, who is one of these next-gen guys. He blew him off the court, didn't give him a chance. And he's beaten Djokovic twice this season already, albeit over 3 sets on hard court. But he knows he can beat him, and belief is a huge thing when you're playing these guys. I think it's the main factor. It's the mental side, and he knows he can beat Djokovic. He's taken sets off him at the French Open as well, so that could be a potential surprise, although it's a total long shot. I think Federer and Nadal will play the other semi, and Federer will probably win it. So Djokovic, Federer final. Djokovic to win in 4 sets, maybe.
Okay, fair enough. And then in the women's?
Oh, well, Serena just looks incredible. She looks back to her best. She's playing unbelievable. She's serving incredibly well. She's moving better than she has in years. She looks really good. And then Halep down the bottom. So probably Serena Halep final. Serena Williams, I'd say.
All right.
I'd say Serena to beat Halep, yeah.
All right, Nico, good stuff. Enjoy the rest of the tournament. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads. Thanks a million.
It's Nico Jones there giving us some thoughts on Wimbledon this morning for you. It's 8:41. You're watching OTB AM, the Sports Breakfast Show.